Well, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has used his Moscow visit to urge Russian President Vladimir Putin to seek a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine.
India is ready to provide support for the restoration of peace. I was very happy to listen to our opinions on it. I assure you and the global community that India favors peace. After listening to my friend President Putin, I am hopeful for peace.
For more, let's bring our government reporter Sudhi Ranjan. And Sudhi, it's interesting, these remarks, right, given that the Indian leader has largely tried to tread quite a fine line in terms of commenting on this conflict. So how are these comments on Ukraine, particularly following the attack on the Children's Hospital, being interpreted?
Well, I mean, we've seen, reactions from across the world, and they've not been very, very favorable. We've seen the State Department, although a very cautious and a very guarded remark that has come from the State Department as Prime Minister Modi landed in Russia. We've seen remarks from Ukraine coming, and the sense that we get by speaking to people on the ground here in New Delhi is that India is very, very aware of this and is trying to kind of get over this. And its stand, so to say, on the Ukraine war hasn't quite changed, although we have seen a different wording, a different formulation coming from the Prime Minister saying that you cannot find peace in the war, in the battlefield. But beyond that, we haven't seen Prime Minister Modi or India going, saying anything different from that. You need to sit down and you will find peace only through diplomacy and dialogue. And that's what has been India's stand. So if one were to look at it from the Western perspective, the US perspective, which has been trying to isolate Putin and punish him for his war in Ukraine, not much change that we can see in New Delhi. It's basically the same stand that New Delhi maintains.
And of course, going into this visit, the role of China was always going to loom large, right? So have we seen that sort of been sidestepped? What are the main takeaways or any deliverables from these meetings?
Well, there are a couple of deliverables from the meeting. Sorry, and one of the things that we see is that in the area of military hardware. In the briefing yesterday, India's Foreign Secretary kind of said that India and Russia are looking at long-term production of spares. Now, India's military is very, very dependent or heavily dependent on Russian hardware, and that becomes even more important because of the border dispute that is on with China. It started in 2020. Both sides have kind of mobilized thousands of troops towards the border. India's military needs a lot of spares. And one of the things that has come out and was kind of declared or made public yesterday is that India and Russia are now talking about jointly producing spares in India. That's one big factor. The other factor is India is also looking at long-term contracts, energy contracts with Russia. There is also, there was a clear indication from the briefing yesterday that India and Russia are getting into a long-term uranium supply agreement or pact for the civil nuclear reactors that India runs. So there have been a couple of deliverables, but at the same point of time, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that was not expected.